Welcome back to Killer Conversations, everybody. I'm Austin, and today we're going to be diving into a case that honestly left me with way more questions than answers.
Yeah, this is a tough one.
Thankfully, I got Amy here with me to help try to unpack this whole thing. Amy, when I first told you about this case, it kind of got under your skin a little bit, right?
It did. It really, a seemingly picture-perfect couple, and then bam, a shocking murder-suicide. It's enough to make you question everything you think you know about relationships,
Absolutely, and that's what we're talking about today. Brandy and Charles Manville from Portage, Indiana.
Right.
And their story, it starts out almost like a Hallmark movie, loving couple facing down a breast cancer diagnosis together.
Yeah.
But then it just takes this incredibly dark turn on Thanksgiving of 2024.
5 years. 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years after Brandy beats cancer, the police get this frantic 911 call from the couple's 21-year-old daughter.
Right. Reporting a domestic disturbance at the family home, Charles, who we later learn was intoxicated, is throwing things, and things are escalating quickly.
And it sounds like the situation just exploded from there.
It did.
According to the statement from the Portage Police Department, Charles gets his hands on a gun and is heard threatening to kill everyone in the house.
I know, chillin', right?
Yeah.
So by the time police get to the scene, it's a horrific scene. Both Brandy and Charles are dead from gunshot wounds.
Wow.
A murder-suicide, and their daughter, thankfully alive, is injured and rushed to the hospital.
So here's what makes this case extra baffling to me, Amy.
Okay.
Back in 2019, Brandy was interviewed by Portage Life. It's a local publication. And she couldn't have been more effusive in her praise for Charles.
Really?
She called him Charlie, her rock, her everything. She described how he never left her side throughout her cancer treatments, how he constantly reassured her and was just grateful to have her in his life.
It's heartbreaking to read her words now, knowing how it all ended.
Yeah.
She even talked about one of the hardest parts of her cancer treatment, losing her hair.
Right.
And she said, and I quote, "I never felt less beautiful, and I never once felt less loved."
Wow.
She credits her support system, specifically mentioning Charlie for helping her through it all.
It makes you wonder what could have possibly shifted so dramatically in their relationship in those 5 years.
I know, it's like what happened between that interview and Thanksgiving of 2024.
Right.
It feels like we're missing a huge chunk of their story.
Huge chunk. And to make things even more difficult, the police still haven't released a motive. And because of the daughter's injuries, they weren't able to interview her about what happened.
You hit the nail on the head, Austin. We're dealing with a massive gap in information here.
We are, but we do have one more piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
A GoFundMe was set up to cover the daughter's medical expenses, and it's filled with messages from friends and family who paint a picture of Brandy as this incredibly kind and loving mother.
Oh, wow.
Someone with a great sense of humor, an infectious laugh, someone who touched the lives of many.
And not just at home, it seems.
Right.
The GoFundMe also mentioned how Brandy worked as an administrative assistant at Portage High School and was known for being incredibly kind to the students there.
Yeah.
They said she always had a smile, a kind word, and would make sure no student left her feeling hungry or down.
So, Amy, we've got this image of Brandy as this beloved mother, friend, and colleague. And then there's Charles, who, based on that 2019 interview, seemed like the perfect partner.
Right.
Where do we even begin to make sense of this tragedy?
It's tough. This case really highlights the hidden nature of domestic violence. It can be lurking beneath the surface, even in relationships that appear loving and supportive to the outside world.
And that's what I think is so unsettling about this, right?
Right.
We tend to have this image in our minds of what domestic violence looks like.
Right.
And this case just shatters all those preconceived notions.
Exactly. Domestic violence doesn't discriminate.
Right.
It can happen in any relationship, regardless of socioeconomic status, race, even outward appearances of happiness, and it's not always just physical either.
So you're talking about like emotional or psychological abuse? Is that what you're getting at?
Absolutely, and it's often harder to detect.
Right.
But it can be just as damaging, if not more so in the long run. The constant belittling, the control, the isolation, all of these tactics can chip away at a person's self-worth until they feel completely trapped.
That's what makes me think back to Brandy's words about feeling so loved during her cancer treatment.
Yeah.
It's possible, isn't it, that things were good back then, but something changed in the years that followed. Maybe there were underlying issues that weren't visible from the outside.
It's definitely possible, Austin. Sometimes a major life event, like a serious illness, can actually mask deeper problems in a relationship. All the focus shifts to survival and support, and any existing cracks just get temporarily sealed over.
Right, but then as life returns to normal, those cracks can reappear, often wider than before, and that's where things can take a dangerous turn.
Exactly. And what's particularly tragic is that Brandy's experience with cancer may have made her more vulnerable to manipulation and control. Think about it.
Yeah.
She's already been through this incredibly difficult and emotional experience and likely relied heavily on Charles for support. So this could have created an imbalance of power in the relationship that he might have exploited.
It's scary to think about, but it makes a lot of sense, and it really underscores the point that domestic violence is often about power and control, not just anger or aggression.
Right, and it's crucial to understand that abuse is often cyclical.
Okay.
It's not always a constant barrage of violence. There can be periods of remorse, apologies, and even genuine affection, which makes it even harder for the victim to leave.
It's almost like this twisted form of manipulation,
Yeah.
making the victim believe that things are getting better only for the cycle to repeat itself.
Sadly, that's a very common pattern, and that's why it's so important for us to talk about the warning signs, to educate ourselves and others about the different forms that abuse can take.
So what can people look out for? What are some red flags that someone might be in an abusive relationship?
Well, there's no one-size-fits-all answer, but some common signs include isolation from friends and family, sudden changes in behavior or appearance, unexplained injuries, and a constant need to check in with their partner or get their approval.
It's important to remember that these signs aren't always obvious, though sometimes the abuse is more subtle and psychological, making it even harder to detect.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to trust your gut if you notice a friend or loved one acting differently, or if something just feels off, don't be afraid to reach out and express your concern. You might be the only person who notices something's wrong.
And if you're experiencing abuse yourself, please know that you're not alone. There are resources available to help you get to safety and start rebuilding your life. Right.
This case is a tragic reminder that domestic violence can affect anyone, and we all have a role to play in preventing it.
This whole case really underscores the need for greater awareness and education surrounding domestic violence. We need to challenge those stereotypes, understand the complexities, and create an environment where victims feel safe to come forward and seek help.
Absolutely.
So we've talked a lot about warning signs and the complexities of domestic violence, but what about prevention? What can we do as a society to stop these tragedies from happening in the first place?
Well, it's a multifaceted problem, and it requires a multi-pronged approach. We need to start early by teaching healthy relationship skills in schools, challenging harmful gender stereotypes, and fostering a culture of respect and equality.
So essentially, we need to address the root causes of the violence, not just react after the fact.
Exactly, and we need to ensure that resources and support services are readily available and accessible to anyone who needs them. This includes shelters, counseling, legal aid, and financial assistance to help victims rebuild their lives.
And it's on all of us to be more vigilant, to recognize the signs of abuse, and to intervene when we see something that doesn't seem right.
Couldn't agree more. We can't just turn a blind eye. We need to have those difficult conversations, reach out to those who might be struggling, and let them know they're not alone.
Well, Amy, this has been a tough case to dissect, filled with heartbreak and unanswered questions. And while we may never fully understand what triggered Charles's actions on that Thanksgiving night, it's vital that we use this conversation as a springboard for action.
Well said. Brandy's story is a tragic reminder that domestic violence can touch anyone, anywhere. Let's honor her memory by working together to create a world where such tragedies are a thing of the past.
Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week with another case, another story, and another opportunity to learn and grow together. Please like and subscribe to our channel for more killer conversations.